I can make you rich, Mr. Randall.
Do me a favor, Ramondi. Shove it.
By 1986, everybody in Hollywood wanted their own Indiana Jones, and somebody decided the answer was Chuck Norris. That's Firewalker. Chuck played Max Donegan, a treasure hunter for hire, with Louis Gossett Jr. as his partner. A mysterious woman named Patricia hired the two of them, showed them a cryptic map that promised gold, and sent them into Central America after an ancient treasure. Critics buried it. The thing sits at 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. The plot was old news and the production looked cheap. But obviously, none of that matters because the treasure was never the point. The point was Chuck and Gossett bickering their way through the jungle like an old married couple. Their chemistry carries the whole movie. Chuck spends half of it cracking jokes instead of skulls. But when the fists finally come out, he reminds you who you're watching. This was Chuck before the jokes. Before the one-liners and the lighthearted stuff that came later, he made action movies like this one. It's actually pretty dark and personal. He played Sean Kane, a detective whose partner got murdered by a drug cartel. And instead of standing behind him, his bosses forced him off the police force. So Kane handed in the badge and did the math. If there's no badge, there's no rules. So he goes down the list of every single person responsible for his partner's death, one name at a time, and it all builds to an explosive finale where he finally gets his hands on the people behind it and just lets loose. Steve Carver directed it, and he gave Chuck room to actually act, and the man could act, no joke. This is one of the most intense, most emotional performances he ever put on film. If you ever wondered where the classic Chuck Norris formula came from, the answer is Hong Kong, 1982. Director James Fargo dropped Chuck right into the middle of the city. He played Josh Randall, an ex-military man running security at a casino, and the casino belonged to his old friend and mentor, Sam. The mob showed up with demands. Sam told them no. So they killed him, and then they killed his family. And from that moment on, Randall is at war with the entire Hong Kong underworld. The city does half the work in this movie. They really filmed it in Hong Kong, and those streets look so much better than some fake studio backlot. And the choreography here is some of the most brutal Chuck did all decade. But my favorite part here is you can actually watch him trying out the swagger and the one-liners, all the stuff that carried him through the rest of the 80s. This is where that guy was born. At number 7, Silent Rage, also from 1982. And this is the strangest movie Chuck ever made because it's basically an action horror movie. He plays Dan Stevens, the sheriff of a small Texas town. He goes up against a psychotic killer named John Kirby, and he handles it the way a sheriff handles it. He shoots him. That should have been the end of the story. Except a team of scientists got hold of Kirby and ran an experimental procedure on him, and it worked better than anyone planned. It made him immortal. Kirby got back up and went on a killing spree through the whole town. So the entire movie comes down to one question. What does Chuck Norris do with a man who cannot die? Director Michael Miller shot it like a slasher flick. There's some very real suspense and real dread, except the lead actually fights back. Chuck got to go darker and heavier than usual as a lawman protecting his town, and that final showdown is one of the best endings he had all decade. This is the most 80s movie in here. A Soviet terrorist launched a surprise attack on American soil, actual coordinated strikes across the country, and America's answer to all of it was one retired guy. Chuck plays Matt Hunter, a former CIA operative who'd walked away from it all. Russians' attack drags him back in, and from that point on, the movie never slows down. Every couple of minutes, something explodes or somebody gets their bones rearranged. It's all action, non-stop. Critics hated it, of course, but it didn't matter one bit because this was pure Cold War fantasy. One man defending the entire country by himself. You could not make a more 80s movie if you tried, and it just wouldn't work without Chuck. The setup on this one is beautiful in how simple it is. The Vietnam War has been over for years, and American prisoners are still locked up over there. Nobody's going to get them. So Colonel James Braddock, that's Chuck, looks at that situation and decides the rescue operation is going to be him. One colonel against everything that country can throw at him. And it gets better, because Braddock isn't some outsider with a map. He was a prisoner over there himself. He knows exactly what those camps are like from the inside. And he walks back in anyway. From there, the movie is everything you want it to be. There's some gunfights, explosions, real suspense, and a big, heroic finish where Braddock pulls it off. The director was Joseph Zito, who made a bunch of movies with Chuck, and this one was a box office hit, so it launched an entire franchise. On paper, this is Chuck's most normal role of the decade. He plays Eddie Cusack, an honest, hard-nosed detective in Chicago. There's no jungle or some secret mission, he's just a regular cop. And then the movie stacks the deck against him just to see what happens. First, a full-blown gang war explodes across the city. Colombian crime families are turning Chicago into a war zone, and Chuck lands right in the middle of it. Then it gets worse. His own department has a corruption problem. So on one side he's got cartels who want him dead, and on the other side he's got cops he can't trust. Most guys would ask for a transfer. Chuck goes rogue and takes on both sides by himself. The director was Andrew Davis, and he shoots Chicago like it's a real crime thriller. It's grounded, tense, and suspenseful. And that somehow makes Chuck scarier, not less. This is the closest thing to a straight thriller here, and Chuck runs the table in it. I need you to appreciate what this movie is selling. Somewhere out there, a terrorist organization has built itself a training program. Not for soldiers, for ninjas. An actual assembly line cranking out ninja assassins run by a cult so secretive nobody can get near it. And the guy who finds out about it happens to be Scott James, a martial artist played by Chuck Norris, which means that for once the terrorists are the ones with a problem. So Chuck goes ninja hunting, and right when the movie's already fun, it drops the twist. The man running the entire operation is Scott's own brother, estranged for years, gone his own way, and apparently spending all that time building an army of killers. So this whole thing is only ever ending one way. The two brothers, face to face, settling it for good. The fights in this one are some of the best martial arts sequences Chuck ever filmed, and it came out in 1980, right at the start of the decade. The man set the bar early and then spent 10 years clearing it. A passenger flight from New York to Tel Aviv gets hijacked mid-route by a group of Lebanese terrorists, and the movie pulled that straight from the headlines. It was inspired by a real hijacking, TWA Flight 847, but then it asked the question everybody watching the news back then was already asking: what if we could just send in the absolute best guys we've got? In this movie, the best guys are the Delta Force, a counter-terrorist unit assembled to take that plane back. Chuck plays Major Scott McQuade, and running the operation is Colonel Nick Alexander, played by Lee Marvin. And that casting turned out to be historic, because this was the last movie Lee Marvin ever made. The man's final role, and he spent it storming a hijacked plane next to Chuck Norris. There are worse ways to go out. Everything about this movie is designed to be as cool as legally possible. It plays like a Western that just happens to take place in 1983. We got big, empty West Texas and one man out there living by his own rules. That man is McQuade, a former Marine who works alone, answers to nobody, and carries a Magnum like it's house keys or something. His personal life's a mess. The authorities can't stand him, and none of it slows him down even slightly. Then an arms dealer makes the worst decision in the state of Texas. He steals a load of military equipment and puts himself on McQuade's radar. McQuade declares his own private war, and the authorities can either help or get out of the way. Now, the reason this is number one: the arms dealer is played by David Carradine, and the rivalry between him and Chuck is just awesome from start to finish. The whole movie is one long collision course, building toward a martial arts showdown between the two of them. And when it finally comes, it delivers so hard it goes straight into action movie history.